Imagine an American living room in the mid-1960s. A black and white television flickers to life as three young women step onto the screen wearing matching gowns, their voices blending so perfectly that the country seems to stop for a moment and listen. Parents pause their evening routines, teenagers gather around the television, and families witness what feels like the arrival of something completely new. 2 millions of viewers, they are simply the Supremes, elegant, graceful, and unforgettable. But behind the polished performances, another story is already beginning to unfold, one shaped by ambition, difficult choices, and the price of becoming a legend. As the years passed, one face slowly became the symbol of the group. Diana Ross stood at the center, and history gradually remembered the remarkable success of the Supremes through her image alone. Yet the group's story was never created by a single person. Florence Ballard brought strength and extraordinary vocal talent. Mary Wilson added style, balance, and determination. Together, they transformed dreams into reality during a time when opportunities for young black women in America were painfully limited. They were friends before they became icons, and long before fame changed everything. They were simply three girls from Detroit hoping music could change their lives. Now, more than 6 decades later, Diana Ross remains one of the last living connections to that extraordinary era. She has witnessed triumph beyond imagination, heartbreaking loss, public controversy, and private struggles that many fans never fully understood. The glittering dresses and unforgettable songs often hid a far more complicated reality. Success brought worldwide fame, but it also created divisions that would leave lasting scars on friendships and reshape the history of one of the greatest vocal groups ever assembled. Their journey raises a question that still echoes today. When history chooses one person to represent the achievements of many, what happens to everyone else who helped build that success? How does a shared dream slowly become remembered through a single face? Those questions remain at the center of the Supremes' remarkable legacy. To understand the answers, we have to return to Detroit during the 1940s and 1950s, long before Motown became a musical empire. The city was filled with neighborhoods where hard-working families struggled to build better futures. Factory shifts, church gatherings, school dances, and close-knit communities shaped everyday life. It was a place where determination mattered just as much as talent, and young people learned early that dreams demanded discipline. Diana Ernestine Ross was born on March 26, 1944, into that environment. She did not grow up surrounded by movie stars or glamorous lifestyles. Instead, she was raised in a working-class neighborhood where ambition often had to compete with reality. Even as a child, however, she paid close attention to appearance and presentation. Fashion fascinated her, not because of luxury, but because it offered confidence. Looking polished became more than style, it became a quiet statement that she belonged wherever she chose to stand. Music was always present around her, but so were responsibility and hard work. Detroit rewarded persistence, and those lessons stayed with Diana throughout her life. She learned that opportunities rarely appeared without preparation. Every performance, every rehearsal, and every challenge demanded complete commitment. Long before audiences recognized her name, she was already developing the discipline that would later define her career. That determination eventually led her toward one small building that would forever change popular music. Before it became a historic landmark visited by fans from around the world, Motown's headquarters was simply a modest house filled with young singers chasing impossible dreams. Inside those walls, voices were refined, performances were perfected, and careers were carefully shaped. Countless hopeful artists walked through its doors, believing their lives might change forever. Diana Ross was not alone when she arrived. Standing beside her were Florence Ballard, Mary Wilson, and the other young women who shared the same hopes. Together they formed a group long before fame entered the picture. They rehearsed endlessly, accepted disappointment after disappointment, and continued believing that one breakthrough could change everything. Eventually, the group evolved into the trio that history would remember. Their journey had already required patience, sacrifice, and resilience, before audiences ever heard a single hit record. Success did not arrive overnight. It was built through constant rehearsals, repeated auditions, and the willingness to keep moving forward despite rejection. Motown itself demanded excellence. Artists were expected to master choreography, public speaking, etiquette, fashion, and stage presence alongside their music. Berry Gordy believed performers had to impress audiences long before the first note was sung. Every movement, every interview, and every appearance reflected the company's vision. Talent opened the door, but discipline determined who stayed inside. For the Supremes, those standards became part of their identity. Their elegant image allowed them to enter television programs and concert halls during an era when racial barriers remained deeply rooted throughout America. They became symbols of sophistication and possibility, proving that music could challenge prejudice in ways few other forces could. At first, success seemed frustratingly distant. Recording sessions came and went without major breakthroughs. The group waited, practiced, and hoped each new release would finally connect with audiences. Then everything changed. One hit led to another, and suddenly their songs were everywhere. Radios played their music constantly, television audiences welcomed them into millions of homes, and the Supremes quickly became one of the biggest acts in America. But, as the spotlight grew brighter, it no longer shined equally on everyone standing beneath it. Everything changed once the records began climbing the charts. Songs that had once been recorded with hope suddenly became national sensations. Radio stations played them from morning until night. Television programs rushed to book appearances, and audiences across America embraced three young women from Detroit, whose voices seemed to capture both joy and heartbreak in equal measure. The Supremes quickly became more than another successful vocal group. They represented a new image of elegance, confidence, and possibility. At a time when the country was still struggling with deep racial divisions, their polished performances reached homes that had rarely seen black women presented with such sophistication on national television. Their graceful movements, glamorous gowns, and effortless harmonies challenged expectations without ever needing to raise their voices. Every appearance seemed perfectly planned. Every smile looked effortless. Yet behind the scenes, nothing about their success came easily. Endless rehearsals, strict schedules, media training, choreography, and constant pressure became part of everyday life. Motown expected perfection, and perfection demanded sacrifices that audiences never witnessed. Berry Gordy understood the power of presentation. He believed music alone was not enough to create international stars. Artists needed discipline, confidence, and an image that television cameras would never forget. The Supremes became one of the greatest examples of that philosophy. Every detail from the way they walked onto a stage to the way they answered interview questions was carefully refined. As their popularity continued to grow, another change slowly became impossible to ignore. Television cameras lingered a little longer on Diana Ross. Magazine covers increasingly featured her face first. Interviewers directed more questions toward her, and audiences gradually began associating the group's success with a single performer rather than three equal members. The shift did not happen overnight. It was subtle at first. Diana possessed a unique stage presence that naturally attracted attention. Her voice carried a softer, more intimate quality than many singers of the era, allowing listeners to feel as though she was speaking directly to them. Combined with her growing confidence before the camera, she became an obvious focal point for producers looking to connect with audiences. But inside the group, the situation was far more complicated. Florence Ballard had helped build the foundation long before fame arrived. Her powerful vocals and larger-than-life personality played a vital role during the group's early years. Mary Wilson contributed stability, professionalism, and unwavering commitment from the very beginning. Neither woman considered herself a background figure. Together, they had shared years of rehearsals, disappointments, and dreams before success finally arrived. As public attention increasingly centered on Diana, emotions naturally became more complicated. Success had brought financial security and worldwide recognition, but it had also introduced comparisons, unequal attention, and growing frustration. Friendships that once seemed unbreakable now faced pressures that very few people outside the industry could understand. Eventually, the branding itself reflected the change. Promotional materials began highlighting Diana Ross more prominently than ever before. For many fans, it seemed like a logical business decision. For others, it represented the moment when a shared achievement started becoming identified with only one member of the trio. The applause never stopped, but behind the standing ovations, the foundation of the Supremes was beginning to crack. What happened next would forever change the lives of Diana Ross, Florence Ballard, and Mary Wilson,